Fred Aldamas was an undergraduate here at UC Berkeley, so we have an alum here on our hands. He's an incredibly prolific scholar, right? He recently received an Eisner Award, which is an award that the comic book industry produces. And your award, there are various awards, your award is in the scholarship, which I think is a really amazing thing for a bunch of non-academics to recognize the scholarship, right, of people that are also in the industry. He's also produced, right, his own very recently, I think I saw a copy, right? He's recently produced some short stories and also some of his own graphic comics. There's another, one of his first studies on Latino comics is in the back on the refreshments table. And he has unbelievably, you really have to like search his wiki page. He has like unbelievably published over 30 books. And you know, like a good third of those are like single author, which is just astounding. And he's also co-authored like wonderful projects, wonderful ideas, like conversations with artists, with writers, and also interviews, which is an incredibly important part of the building of like archives in Latinx studies. He recently received at The Ohio State University, he received the Arts and Humanities Distinguished Professor of English and the University Distinguished Scholar, which is a really, I think that was like about 2 years ago or something like that, which is really a great, great honor, especially in Latino studies and especially for Latinx faculty. So it's an incredibly wonderful accolade, I think, for his like prolific work. His work, he graduated as an undergraduate in English literature, and his early books look at narrative and literature. I remember your study on Arturo Islas, which was like a groundbreaking work on like a queer Chicano author. And you know, he just continually has sort of been on that cutting edge of like new scholarship. And from there, he's gone on to study popular culture and broadly cultural studies in general. Some of his work includes film. He published a book. The last time I saw you at Ohio State, you had just published a book on the really cool cinema of Roberto Rodriguez, right? Robert. Yeah, Robert Rodriguez. And he's also published a book on cine or film in Mexico. The range is really, really impressive. The depth is impressive. He's also been working on, in collaboration with other scholars, on cognitive science, like, you know, finding like intersections. His work is incredibly interdisciplinary. It's rigorous and it's fascinating and like, you know, always new frontiers. So I'm really, really pleased to have Fred back at UC Berkeley and to have him with this fabulous documentary and then a lecture to follow on the work that he's been doing on Latinx comic. He also has an amazing website which is called, what is it, Planetary Comics?
Yeah, it's under Professor Latinx.
Yes, Professor Latinx t-shirt. Yeah. So if you search, it's really cool because what it is it's a website for global comics production, which is, again, a really fabulous thing. So at any rate, I just wanted to honor Fred a little bit. I've been talking forever about his work, but anyway, welcome, Fred, and welcome to all of you.
Thank you. I chose to do this movie not as an, I could have done it, you know, a number of different ways, of course, but given my long interest in bringing our creators into the same space as us scholars and really actually kind of dissolving those boundaries so that we can be in the same space and learn from each other, I wanted the documentary to unfold in and through a whole variety of different bodies, talking about experiences, their journeys, their interactions, and not as, say, a voiceover narration with me the whole way through, you know, giving it to you and giving images from comics. Those are there, I think they're important, but what I think is really amazing is that we have this archive of living, breathing knowledge amidst us. And, you know, part of your work and our work is to really kind of embrace that as knowledge, right? As a repository of knowledge. So as a segue, let me just move to the talk. If I can see, turn this on. Okay. Just set this up. There we go. Okay. So I mean, in a way, the showing of the documentary and the questions have prepped us nicely for this, which is to say that our stories matter, right? Our different stories. And you guys are very familiar with this kind of picture here, right? We grew up after we moved from Mexico, my mom, we have a very weird story like all of us, but basically my mom, who's Guatemalan Irish, when she was 18, she's like, I gotta get out of California. She got on a bus to go visit the family that she'd always heard stories about in Guatemala City, but she never made it. She got off the bus in Mexico City and met my dad. So we were born out down there, and at a certain point things just weren't working out with my dad, so she threw us back on the bus and brought us back, right? And for some of you guys, I know Alberto in a different sort of way, but some of us, especially in kind of rural parts of California where was really backward, is still kind of, when we spoke Spanish, we spoke Mexican. As we actually spoke that dirty Mexican, right? So a lot of shame built into the way we spoke, and even punished physically for it. My mom saw this when she was very young, and so we would go to daycare, and she actually put herself through Sacramento State to become an educator, like some of us in this room, to make a difference, a bilingual educator. And then we went through all those crazy props and everything where you had to have your doors open when you were teaching in public schools, because if they heard Spanish, right, you would get punished. Anyway, I lived through all of this and sort of survived, right? But you can tell I have absolutely no accent, right? I mean, it's a neutral. It's not even it's just like nothing, right? Berkeley, and to be honest, affirmative action saved me. It saved me. Like, I would not be standing here if affirmative action didn't exist at that time. So some of the questions that I had when I was, people like Alfred Arteaga were teaching here and others, what is it about our literature, our culture, our art, the murals, all of that stuff that we create, what can it do in the real world? These were my questions when I was your age. What can this stuff do? And so I started writing lots of books after graduate school. And as Laura was saying, a lot of my work is really about kind of, bringing or diffusing those borders between scholarship and the creative, right? So a lot of that is really centered around that. A couple of years ago, I was lucky in that I was actually able to publish my first book of creative fiction, which I'll share with you in just a little bit. But really, I started getting super excited, and I know Juana Maria here is also really excited about this stuff, along with the rest of you, about pop cultural studies, right? This active creation and active reception of Latinx cultural phenomena, and understanding this kind of distillation and reconstruction that Jaime and Alberto and others do, and what it can do as situated within these specific locations, historical, linguistic, political, to make new, right? Our perception of the world, our thoughts and our feelings, our heart, right? And our mind, our brain. Like, we become so habituated to things, to aggressions, to shamings, to pain. And I want to know how it is that someone can take a pen or pencil or a camera or, type a story that wakes us to this again from different perspectives, right? So that's what I've been doing. And we are legion, right? So it's becoming even more disgraceful that, as Laura was asking, like, where are those comics in the mainstream comic book stores that speak to us, that they aren't there. I mentioned in the movie that, in the end, we're something like 18% of the population, but because of the gatekeeping, right, the push out, we see in schools already, and I know some of you are working in education, push out and then locking of the doors behind new generations of us, we aren't getting to those places where we can realize our full potentialities, right? We're not getting to these places. And there's gatekeeping in the representational areas, right? Where are all of those people? You know, there was the Oscar So White. And some people made some gestures, you know, oh, we're going to do an internship program to bring in sort of more, you know, Latinx youngsters into our program. But really, really Band-Aids. Like, the systemic work still has to be done, right? Before we're going to start seeing real changes. Tools for the realization of our potentialities and our communities have been willfully absented from the US cultural imaginary, right? Willfully absented as a result. So I'm just going to get past these slides to give us... Right? You remember that? Okay, so that's what we're talking about in terms of this, the mainstream not doing anything really to step outside of comfort zones, to do anything beyond reproducing these kinds of stereotypes. But I mean, they're everywhere, right? We become habituated to it, but for people who like sweet, spicy, steamy, this is Mexican chocolate, this is the Abuelita brand, this is how it's being marketed, right? But we become kind of, it just becomes part of, you know, everything. And what I want to do is find out how, like, creators, like the next creators, are pulling that back out and waking us to this world, hypersexualized in ways, right? Or the sinner, right? Aaron Hernandez, remember? So we have the saints that are hypersexualized, the sinners, right? Because we fall from grace like that, right? The mainstream wants us to fall. South American stunner Amazonia Barbie doll. Right? This exists.
Capture your heart.
Yeah. This is the stuff that's out there. You know, these online video games, that ethnic cleansing, where actually the video game is to go and shoot Latinxes crossing the border, right? This is the kind of, there is these things constantly. Anybody remember Chips? The remake? How is it possible? You know, Michael Pena, definitely, like, I think one of the most cool actors out there right now. But, like, he accepts a role where he is so oversexed that, right? He has to go to the bathroom to relieve himself, like, you know, every hour or something, right? And there's no irony built into this narrative at all. I mean, he's like the comic buffoon plus, on top of that, you know, all these other hypersexuals. But we see a lot of this stuff in our mainstream media, where we become, you know, like in Desperate Housewives, right? Always angry, but always the butt of the jokes. We're never laughing with her, we're always laughing at her, right? And just to remind you, I'll just pull this up here.
First Manny correcting me, and now you. I have a problem I want to know, Dick. What else do I say wrong? What else? And what else?
Just little mispronunciations. Like, for example, last night you said, we live in a dog-eat-dog world.
So?
Well, it's dog-eat-dog world. Well, it's not blessings in disguise. It's blessings in disguise. Carpal tunnel syndrome is not carpool tunnel syndrome.
Oh, so now you have a problem with the way I speak? I told you.
Right, so, I mean, we're not laughing with her, we're laughing at her. But what I'm trying to get at is that we become, very often we become habituated to all of this stuff, right? That's actually really destructive to our psyches. This is another moment in Bratz. Don't see this movie ever, but I want you to take a look at this.
You have 10 seconds to get it out of there, you little toad!
Don't get your bragas in a twist. Perfection takes time, and I'm worth every single second.
Enough with the hair already. Looking good, chica.
Jasmine, you will pay for this. Come on, niños, get dressed. You don't want to be late. Oy, 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 go comb your hair. And you come with me. I got something for you.
Buenos dias!
Okay, you get it, right? So, so how many of you have a mariachi band in your kitchen in the mornings, right?
That was the only one.
But you see, I mean, this actually beautifully gets to your point, which is that 99% of the stuff out there doesn't bother with anything to like take that step out of these stereotypical zones, right? So we have mariachi bands. Did you guys watch the Batman v Superman movie? I'm sorry that you spent your money on that movie, right? But there's a moment when, okay, so Superman, we understand. He's just saved Metropolis from a high-tech alien invasion. That we get. Okay, maybe we need Superman for that. But do we need Superman when he gets the sense that there's a little girl across the border in Juarez in a burning building? Like, we can't save our own little girl from a burning building, right? That's the message. But even worse, take a look at this.
As a population on this planet, have been looking for a savior. 90% of people believe in a higher power, and every religion believes in some sort of messianic figure.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And what was your reaction?
Yeah.
Like, seriously? Okay, so we finally get our moment, because I'm telling you, I count Latinxes in superhero movies, and we just aren't there. We might be a gas station attendant, maybe like a soldier. That's basically it. And here we finally get a moment when we're in Mexico, in the space of Mexico, and we happen to be happens to be Day of the Dead, right? Right? Crazy. Okay. So yeah, when our U.S. reality is Chicanx, Latinx, okay, and even in places like Columbus, Ohio, the South and the Midwest are the fastest growing demographics for Latinxes in those regions. The lack of representation and misrepresentation is ignorant, right? Shameful, destructive, and let's just call it for what it is, right? Racist. So I don't want the whole thing to be negative, so let's think about what we are doing on our side of the table, right? Because we're not just sitting back and letting this happen, and our creators certainly are not. Right? So Disney filed the patent, you guys all remember, to trademark Dia de los Muertos. You guys were probably too young to remember, but yeah, crazy, right? Dia de los Muertos. I mean, let's patent Halloween. I don't know, right? This is crazy stuff. Lalo Alcaraz created Muerto Mouse, got the attention of Disney. Right, and then was brought on to consult on Coco among other folks, right? And there are some things that we can be critical of with Coco, but for the most part, it's definitely not that superhero thing that we just saw, right? For sure. Also, really cool stuff going on, right? With culture clash for decades now. In the areas of comedy, right? With laughing, right? Recognizing social injustices, right? So we can also laugh, and we can even laugh at ourselves, but at the same time, it can be a space for us to learn, right? And to act, right? So here's a little moment from George Lopez.
Niño. That's just rain. That ain't Latino related. If it rains a lot, El Niño. If it rains more, La Niña. They don't do that to any other culture. They don't do it to the African Americans because they're too proud and they would stand up and say something, and we need to do that. We need to say no more. You have never been watching CNN and heard that El Negro was coming.
Right? So yeah, so I think it's important for us to be thinking about all of the different ways that pop cultural phenomena can be wrested back, taken back, and used. We were talking about tools earlier. Tools for learning, for social activism, for waking people to the kinds of stereotypes, right? Cut through the racist and sexist narratives that create an illusion of a natural order of things. That's what George Lopez is doing. We're seeing it in Latinx cinema, and we have been, right? All these great things that have been happening. Sci-fi stuff with Sleep Dealer, the Robert Rodriguez films, but we also have Lonnie Seoon, Cesar Chavez, all this stuff that we're doing. And here's just a little bit of, so we have, as it's becoming a space for the distillation and reconstruction and affirmation of different intersectional identities. And I want to just highlight this one from Lonnie Seoon. This is when Che learns that his son is gay. Really powerful moment, and what we see is all this really amazing camera work, right, to give shape to this really powerful moment. Point of view shot, the pull in, right, tilted close up, the Jess asleep, the son being asleep, the rigid lines of the doorway and the Polaroid photos that frame Che, the machista father, right, the lighting, all of these things, the rising pitch, are working to give shape to this really significant moment in a narrative that's showing us in the world and allowing us also to identify and see a part of our lives, our family, our community in this way. He finally comes into the realization, right, that his extreme rigidity, his machista ways have created or been a part of the destruction of community. But what's beautiful is this moment, I think, where you'll see he kind of comes to this realization in and through this moment of the danza azteca and the indigeneity, right, as a space for healing. Another really powerful moment that Peter Bratt, by shaping the moment in a very specific way, using the auditory, right, the flutes, the drum, the increasing frequency, the editing, and the cross-cutting, right, between a present and the past, the rain, right, that catharsis, the slow methodical beat, slow motion time-lapse, to convey the altering state in and through non-binary indigenous ancestral culture and its search for cosmic harmony, right? This is all happening. Real women have curves. This is, I know a lot of us teach this one as well in our classes. Really amazing, right? Affirmation of a Latinx body, a space of multi-generational healing, and really coming into this space, the site of self-affirmation, not pain and shame, which, we can and do, right, in our families experience the sort of reproduction of that. From this beautiful moment.
How beautiful we are. Qué bien se siente, ¿verdad? To get rid of all these clothes, just let it all hang out. Okay, ladies, we have work to do.
Who cares what we look like when no one's watching us? Mama, aren't you hot?
They're coming.
What's that scar?
This one? This one is you.
Okay, I'm gonna just keep us moving forward. We already saw a little bit of Book of Life mentioned in the documentary. I love that this movie's like real ideal audience are the detention kids, right? So the margins of our schools, right? The detention kids. And of course, we have the God Latinx, Luca, among others that are part of that. That's the film's ideal audience, the one that it's speaking to, right? And just, this is a great moment.
Center of the universe. And long ago, in the center of Mexico, was the quaint little town of San Angel.
Churros! Churros! Frosted churros!
Now naturally, since San Angel was the center of the universe, direct...
So finally we get, like, we are the center of the universe, right? Mexico finally in a feature-length, like, animated film, we are the ones that are the center. Comics, incredible, right? And of course, Alberto's work right here, really amazing space for this kind of inhabiting new, waking us to other ways of existing, etc., right? Through the willful distillation of the building blocks of reality, using the visual and the verbal to geometrize the story. And this new collection just came out, Tales from La Vida, it literally like a couple of weeks ago, and I put it together because I wanted all of you guys to have a kind of almost one-stop shop experience of over 80 creators, Latinx creators, and the constraint that I gave everybody was reach deep into your past and think of a moment, a hinge moment or a significant moment as a Latinx creator. Could it be like music that you heard or something that happened in your family, and everybody like threw down, and so and by the way, it's only $12, so go, you should definitely get this, Lauda for sure. This is like great stuff, and yeah, so that's happening, and it's this distillation, the geometrizing of the story by all of these different creators, and I just want to give you a quick example. Rodi's Montijo, who used to be Oakland-based, and I think he moved to LA. Yeah. But this is what I mean by willful distillation. So he's never met this is my kid when she was little tiny. But when you guys see big head, little body like that, what's your reaction? Cute, yeah. It's like the shortcut for us to have empathy. Nothing needs to be told to us. We just experience it, right? And so so what he's doing, he's distilling and reconstructing, and boom, we feel automatic empathy, that kind of reflex emotion for this character. I've always wondered, when she was little like this, how in the world do they hold these big heads up on these tiny little bodies, right? So here's Pablo, he's walking down, so geometrizing of the story, the only kinds of letters here are the sounds being created, and boom, he gets run over. First couple of pages, Pablo gets run over. But what's amazing is that after he gets run over, his journey takes him into Mictlan, into the underworld. And it's in Mictlan that he meets Quetzal, who's a kind of superhero character in this narrative. And Quetzal introduces him to his pre-Columbian past through the visual narrative of the Codex. This is all happening in a comic book, right? How cool is that? And the beautiful thing about it is he goes through this journey of learning, and in the end, Quetzal, there's this joy, and there's a restoration of harmony to the community. The crops, the rain comes, and the crops are bountiful. This is more of a mainstreamy one. This is Gabi Lavetta's America Chavez, right? And I love that they hired Gabi Lavetta, this queer writer who did a YA fiction, to come in and basically create this character, even though she'd appeared a little bit earlier. And I also love that she kicks butt with her abuelita, right? And this is happening. This is happening in mainstream comics, right? This is happening. Unfortunately, they pulled the plug on this one, right? So right when we're getting something really good, they decide to pull the plug. Anyway, so here we go. Let's. I'm going to get past these words because I want us to. This was one of the responses of a fan. Thank you for giving me a hero that I can relate to, giving us a strong woman of color who is a part of the LGBT plus community. Means so much. It's a step forward for people who have been living in the margins to come to the light and be seen as the amazing people that they are. A fan, right? And this is, we hear, I'll read it all over the place. This is just an example of one of my stories and long stories cut short. And I was lucky enough to work with Jaime Hernandez from the Bros Hernandez to do the cover. And I wanted, when we were talking on the phone, I said, Jaime, I want people when they come to this to see us and our community, our family, from the littlest ones all the way up to our old elders as superheroes. And I want us to be flying out of the Americas, right? Where these kind of borders have been placed on us, but in actuality, we are hemispheric, right? We are always connected to ourselves across this hemisphere. And he got it, and he just jammed it out. These are flash fictions, long stories cut short. Long stories cut short, the press said, why that? And I said, because we haven't been given a chance for the long stories. I Am Alfonso Jones is a good example of that, but we see it, we read it all the time. The little ones that are being separated from families along the border, youngsters that are being gunned down. We haven't been given, we aren't given the chance for the long stories. And this was a moment, I wrote them both in English and Spanish, and also put the illustrations because I wanted to become a transmedial kind of experience for us to move between languages, between visual cultures, because that's how we are, right? That's how we are. Cuffs come off, then told to go sit by the TV area, told to keep my head low and don't look or talk to anyone, some bad motherfuckers in here. What would it mean for us to cross the street without a light, to have us pulled over because one of our taillights is out and suddenly being thrown in jail for nothing, right? What would go on in our minds and our bodies and our feelings, our hearts, confined suddenly to a prison cell, right? And then in this hemispheric move, what was it like to be in Chile, right, with the people who pushed against repressive government, disappeared, not just put in jail, but disappeared. So it's a flash fiction, but in my creator's mind, I wanted you to experience it as a hemispheric, right, fiction, but also as something that is happening to us every day, right? It's part of our reality. So studies of today's Chicanx, Latinx cultural phenomena remind me that all of us deserve opportunities to grow, the desire to discover, grow the capacity to create, and to realize capacities to imagine different options, and thus different tomorrows, different options and different tomorrows, in and through all things Chicanx, Latinx. My scholarship and my sort of creative work and just who I am, and maybe I got this from my mom, right, who sacrificed a lot to try to make a difference. She died young. We had pesticide spray by our house and by our school. She was very young when she died. I created at OSU the laser Latinx Space for Enrichment Research because I want my scholarship and everything that I do to breathe beyond just books. I want it to breathe with you guys.
Latino Role Models is about bringing as many high school students and now some middle school students to OSU campus to really show them that OSU and college itself is a place for them.
Through my counselor at school, she invited me to come to this program last year, and it got me really excited for college and pumped up and confident because, being a Latina, I was being able to be represented.
I think it was awesome. I think there was a lot of information given to us.
They spoke about their struggles and how they got here, and it was really inspiring.
We say at Laser that you can't be what you don't see, so giving these kids that opportunity is incredible.
And then I'm just gonna share with you another little thing. These are just things that you can do kind of beyond. But I noticed in Columbus, Ohio, that our Latinx and our African American communities, we experience similar kinds of aggressions every day, but we weren't ever given a space to be together. And so I wanted to create a space where comic book creators like Jaime, Alberto, and others, many others, would come together. And this year we had, it was amazing. So many of you guys, for K through 12 kids. So I bus in these kids, they get to do workshops with you guys, they get to meet you, they get to feel your work, they love buttons, they love it. And they all so happy. And here's just a little clip. One last one, I promise. So today and tomorrow's Chicanx, Latinx demand the right and opportunity to develop fully cognitive and emotive selves, right? Demand the right to grow and realize causal and counterfactual potentials in the form of comics, film, fiction, transmedial borderland narratives, and anything yet to be imagined. Real Chicanx Latinx lives matter. Thank you.